Chapter 1. The Enigmatic Guest Emerges. What's up, fam? Welcome back to another chilling chapter. Before we dive into today's twisted mystery, Hercule Poirot and the final waltz of death, hit me up. What made you smile today, and where in the world are you listening from? I'm featuring your stories in the next drop, so don't be shy. Now grab your tea, dim the lights, and get ready, because nothing in Whispers in the Fog is ever what it seems. The heavy rain lashed against the windows of the dilapidated manor, each thundering drop a reminder that the night held a sinister edge. A scream shattered the stillness, piercing through the howling winds, vibrating through the walls like a ghostly wail. In the shadows of the flickering candlelight, a body lay sprawled across the polished oak floor of the library, a crimson stain blossoming on the pristine white of her gown. Lady Eleanor Hadley, a well-known socialite of the English countryside, now struck down in the prime of her life. As the desperate gasps of the few assembled guests filled the room, thick with horror and disbelief, the atmosphere turned palpable with fear. "Ah, but the human heart, it hides many things, mon ami," mused Hercule Poirot, his sharp brown eyes glistening with intuition as he arrived amidst the turmoil. His presence was like a calm amidst chaos, with every aspect of his being emanating elegance and control. He took in the scene before him, dazzlingly sharp. Lady Hadley's blonde locks lay stark against the floor's dark wood, while nearby, an overturned chair whispered of struggle. Poirot's mind whirred, churning through potential motivations, secrets, and lies. The essence of humanity laid bare. Among those gathered in the library, suspicion unfurled like a hidden serpent. There was Gerald Hadley, the late Lady Eleanor's husband, his face as pale as the ghostly luminescence cast by the candle flames. It was no secret that his affections had strayed. Whispers of scandal around town had reached even Poirot's attentive ears. Then lurking ominously in the shadows was Amelia Brant, an old friend of Eleanor's, whose recent descent into bitterness had been all but palpable. Her jealousy was the talk of every tea party, and now the tension between her and the late Lady Hadley might have birthed a motive steeped in rage. Lastly, the sleek silhouette of Victor Hale, a dashing and enigmatic stranger, recently arrived in the town, yet with ties to Lady Hadley's past, sent ripples of uncertainty through the room. What reasons could this man harbor for being present on such a sinister night? With the storm still battering the manor as if nature were in league with the mystery at hand, Poirot began his inquiries. "I must ask you all, the moments preceding this tragic event, what transpired?" His questions flared into the air like the snapping of dry twigs in the darkness, drawing eyes towards each person in the dim light. Gerald trembled, clutching at the mantle, his words hurried and fraught. I was just in the study, reading. I heard the scream." A nervous swallow, shifty eyes. It would not do for him to be too rehearsed. Amelia, all tension and fraught decorum, interrupted him. "I had been with Eleanor, sharing secrets, and then the tempest grew fiercer. I left for a breath of fresh air," she said, though her gaze flickered and darted nervously, betraying her confidence. Poirot leaned in, capturing every detail in his mind. Each word, each hesitation, each fleeting glance held potential answers, or cleverly concealed alibis. Victor, however, remained unperturbed, a smirk curling his lips. "I was simply observing. Lady Hadley was the life of the gathering. Such vitality, it was intoxicating. His charm paid dividends to deception, rendering him a powerful wild card amongst the gathering's plot." Poirot regarded him closely, feeling the chill of concealed truths coursing through the air. After gathering scattered fragments of information, Poirot stepped back, his sharp intellect churning with greater urgency. Unbeknownst to the others, the late Lady Eleanor had recently inherited a hidden fortune, concealing the origins of her wealth, while an unopened envelope sat ominously at her desk, marked with Victor's name. Had sinister intentions lurked beneath his charming veneer? Or perhaps it was Gerald, desperate to rid himself of the marriage that shackled him to such a high society facade. As the clock ticked, counting away precious moments of resolution, Poirot decided to delve deeper into the tangled web. The questions remained. Who was truly guilty, and who merely posed as a pawn? The specter of betrayal darkly fogged the clarity of the night, and secrets clamored for exposure. Every piece of information felt significant, yet wrapped in illusions, leading towards plausible paths of guilt only to twist back as red herrings, silently sapping his certainty. Returning to the drafty room, Poirot saw each person sharpen in focus. Lady Eleanor's lifeless body now wore a shroud of cruel irony, with even greater motives yet undiscovered. With each interrogation, tensions escalated, and as they spoke, fleeting smirks and anxious glances created a tension palpable enough to cut. However, Poirot remained ever poised, listening intently as scratching truths attempted to unravel amidst the finger-pointing and accusations. In the following hours, the dark revelations began to unfurl, each character ensnared by guilt, yet ensnared tighter by fear. Just as Poirot felt a thin thread of clarity weaving through the shadows, an unexpected twist emerged, sharpening his keen instincts. A letter fell from Gerald's pocket, unnoticed by all but Poirot. It bore the seal of a gambling den and a date that implicated Gerald's debts with more than mere card games. A link that led to the hidden wealth of Lady Hadley, the kind that could entrap someone entirely unprepared. Yet when laying bare the evidence before the candlelight, Poirot discovered himself torn between the unfolding truths. As Amelia, too, revealed her hidden past with Victor, shedding light on the hidden connections that lingered like unwanted phantoms. One thread led to another, creating a tapestry of misunderstandings, but the heart of this enigma still lay buried. Finally, as the storm quietened to an eerie stillness, Poirot gathered the suspects once more. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his voice a taut wire drawing every hue in the room to him, "the answers lie within the human heart, darker than this storm." As he wove together the intricate details and deceptions, the emotional weight crushed down like the dreadful thunder, revealing two alarming truths. Gerald's crumble, ensnared by the gaming tables, was only a facade. Victor had indeed been present to assure Eleanor's impending fortune became his. The entwining of love, greed, and betrayal culminated in an unanticipated crescendo where loyalties shattered amongst nightmare truths. The denouement left everyone standing frozen, with hearts racing before Poirot, recognizing that the feigned innocence now painted darkly over each. With the final revelation hanging in the air, Poirot fixed his gaze upon Victor, his eyes narrowing. "It is you, the puppeteer of fate, who shall learn that the human heart, when corrupted, reveals the cruelest of fates. Poetic justice, n'est-ce pas?" The words cut through the remnants of the storm like a knife. Justice served, yet its shadow forever looming. Chapter 2. Whispers in the Dark. The whispering shadows danced along the walls of the dimly lit inn, curling and flickering with the erratic glow of candlelight as an unsettling silence settled over the gathering. Outside, the storm howled with bitter ferocity, tossing tree branches against the windows like frantic hands desperate to break through. In a corner, where the light barely reached, a solitary figure sat, his face etched with apprehension, clutching the lapels of his sodden coat. The tension was palpable, thick as the air before a crash of thunder, as if the very walls themselves held their breath, awaiting the next drop of dread. In that charged moment, Lady Henrietta Ashcroft collapsed onto the floor, a shrill scream escaping her lips, followed by silence as her body slumped against the wooden floorboards, lifeless and devoid of color. The guests, an ensemble of society's finest, now circled her fallen form, their expressions morphing into a grotesque mask of horror and disbelief. It was a macabre tapestry, the swirling shadows concealing secrets as heavy as the storm clouds outside, and Hercule Poirot stood amidst them, an island of calm in a sea of chaos. "Mon Dieu," he uttered softly, stepping forward, his sharp brown eyes scanning the room. The dimness barely concealed the grim tableau that unfolded before him, each gasp and murmur a note in the symphony of despair that enveloped them. "Life in the shadow of death, it holds many secrets, does it not?" His voice was soft, yet carried an authority that demanded attention. Poirot knelt beside Lady Ashcroft, noting the way her delicate hand still grasped a crumpled note, the ink smeared with what appeared both to be smudged writing and tears. What chaos lies within the heart of a so-called friend? He pondered quietly, keenly aware that within this circle, betrayal lurked, masked in pretense. Amongst the trembling guests, three figures stood out like embers in the dark. There was Reginald Ashcroft, husband to the late Lady Henrietta, his face a mask of feigned sorrow that didn't quite reach his eyes. It was rumored that he had stumbled into a financial quagmire deeper than any of his dinner invitations suggested, a motive draped in desperate lengths as he sought to hide his ventures from those around him. Glancing towards him, Poirot sensed the tension. Reginald tightly entwined his fingers, as if to stave off the revelation of guilt pulsing at his core. Next, there was Claire Fontaine, Henrietta's confidant, a woman whose laughter was as intoxicating as her charms, yet whose gaze now twinkled like cold steel. The whispered insinuations in their circle hinted at a romantic entanglement gone awry, one that beamed with deceit brighter than the candles lighting this grave scene. Though her visage bore hints of anguish, her movements were too calculated. She clutched her shawl around her shoulders as if to shield herself from prying eyes, or perhaps from the weight of her own secrets. Lastly, perhaps most enigmatically, there was the stoic Victor Hale, a captivating stranger intertwined with both Lady Ashcroft's past and the lives surrounding her. Emerging from obscurity with smooth charm, Victor appeared unflappable, standing amidst the shifting shadows with an aloof grace crafted to mislead even the most cunning gaze. Poirot observed him closely, his eyes piercing, for Victor's presence had the air of a man who had waded into treacherous waters and found in them opportunity rather than peril. What motivations danced behind that enigmatic mask, he wondered. Ah, but the human heart, it hides many things, he mused silently. A tension-filled silence engulfed them as Poirot began his inquiries, each word falling palpable upon anxious ears. I must ask, what, dear friends, was the final conversation shared with Lady Ashcroft? His voice breathed life into the uneasy silence, challenging the shadows to reveal their truths. Reginald hesitated, his tone wavering. We were planning a charity event, a gala, one that was to elevate our standing once more, he stammered. Then Claire interjected with forced calm. Henrietta was overwhelmed with excitement, but her gaze shifted to Victor, who offered her a faint, unsympathetic smile. But perhaps it was too much for her fragile heart. Poirot noted the subtle shift in Claire's expression, the way her blue eyes darted, as if suspicious of Victor's knowledge. As Poirot could discern, the plot thickened like the fog rolling outside the window. Victor, with an aura of nonchalance, thrown in the midst of it all, spoke, seemingly detached. Her vibrancy was enchanting. She brought life to every room, even as shadows began to close in. His words danced dangerously close to a confession, each syllable weaving further confusion into the already tangled web. Across the room, as other guests cast wary glances at each other, unsupported accusations and hidden grievances began to emerge into view. Poirot moved through the room, not just as an investigator, but a silent observer honing in on nuances. The candlelight flickered, framing each suspect against an ominous backdrop. It was as if the shadows were alive, engaged in a secret plot of their own. A hidden note slipped from Reginald's pocket, unnoticed by the bustling crowd around him, yet caught by Poirot's astute gaze. He picked it up discreetly, the words scrawled in panic revealing a troubling context of debts attached to another affair entirely. High stakes beyond mere social reputation. Just as Poirot felt the fabric of certainty beginning to weave, a sudden revelation crackled through the air like a lightning bolt. While hush fell among the group, Poirot realized that an unexpected twist lay ahead. Claire and Victor, drawn together in pursuit of something deeper than friendship, now faced a reckoning they hadn't anticipated. With every assurance exchanged, a hidden loyalty tethered them like a tightly braided rope, a half-truth swirling into falsified love. As the storm raged outside and the candles flickered violently, Poirot gathered the guests once more. Silence now ruled with only the staccato of a heartbeat thrumming louder than the impending thunder. His steady voice echoed through the room. Alas, my friends, the truth shall emerge like a phoenix from the ashes of deceit. With meticulous clarity, he unveiled the threads of betrayal woven tightly among them, Reginald's debts, Claire's facade of friendship, and Victor's dangerous liaisons. Do you see, Poirot pronounced, his voice an instrument of crescendo. Lady Henrietta had discovered the cracks in each of your facades, exposing those unprepared for the truth lying just beneath the surface, each a whisper leading to death. In the ominous silence that followed, Poirot lingered his gaze upon Claire. But it is you, my dear, who wielded the dagger, not of steel, but of secrets buried, deep. The betrayal, so sharp and hurtful, struck the room with chilling clarity. As the finality of Poirot's revelation carved a stark silhouette against their beleaguered selves, he intoned, "And in this storm, it is the whispers in the dark which carry the heaviest weight, for they unveil the heart's most profound betrayals." With that, the tension slackened. The storm began to fade, yet the gravity of truth would forever linger, much like the shadow that closed the gap where trust once thrived. Chapter 3. The Dance of Deception. In the stillness of the night, a frigid chill clawed at the air, wrapping itself around the gathering like an unwelcome cloak. It was not the storm raging outside that sent shivers down the spines of those within, but the unsettling atmosphere crafted by desperation and secrets hidden behind carefully curated smiles. As the clock struck midnight, the shadows outside coalesced into a dark vortex, swallowing the light from the flickering candles that struggled against the encroaching darkness. Then, an unthinkable noise shattered the stillness. A glass shattered, followed by a blood-curdling scream echoing through the grand hall, freezing all in their tracks. Poirot stood amongst the guests, his expression a quiet storm of concentrated resolve. He noted the way Lady Amelia's eyes widened in horror as she pointed toward the grand staircase, a smear of crimson glinting like a jewel against the stark white marble. There, sprawled on the staircase, lay the lifeless body of Reginald Ashcroft, the breath of life extinguished with sudden ferocity, his face forever contorted in a rictus of fear. "Mon Dieu," Poirot murmured softly, stepping forward as an electric tension filled the air. The heart indeed harbors many secrets, yet the cold embrace of death lays bare truths long buried. As onlookers gasped and murmured in disbelief, Poirot observed their reactions with acute scrutiny. The chaos grew as Claire Fontaine stumbled back. Against a wall, her hand pressed against her mouth, while Victor Hale stood aloofly, a shadow amidst the turmoil. His eyes glistened with an inscrutable sheen. Lady Amelia, her brow furrowed, clutched her hands together, her voice quivering. What could compel such violence in our midst? Fear, my dear Amelia, often reveals itself in the most grotesque of ways, Poirot responded, kneeling beside the fallen man, his sharp eyes scanning the scene with meticulous care. Everything here spoke of betrayal, the flurry of hastily covered whispers, the hidden motives bathed in darkness, and the glint of envy-soaked admiration still clinging to the room like a fog. In that grim tableau, Poirot discerned three main suspects, each entangled in their own web of duplicity. Reginald's wife, the late Lady Henrietta Ashcroft, had left behind a will that saw her fortune entangled in the affairs of those closest to her, stoking flames of greed amongst them. Reginald, a man around whom rumors of financial despair swirled like vultures, had much to gain from his wife's demise. Claire Fontaine, Lady Henrietta's confidant, had not only danced in the warm embrace of friendship, but had also woven love's intricate threads into a dangerous tapestry with Reginald, only to be shunned at last. Lastly, Victor Hale, with an enigmatic past and his eyes lurking just beyond the veil of the present, bore the demeanor of a man who had more to lose than he cared to reveal. As Poirot began his inquiries, each thread unraveled slowly but surely. He turned first to Claire, who trembled ever so slightly, her meticulous expressions betraying a deeper turmoil. "My dear Claire, what of your association with Reginald? Surely your falling out with Henrietta must carry its weight." For a brief moment, her eyes glinted with something that resembled anger before falling away from his gaze. Henrietta is a delicate flower, Poirot. One can only water a garden so much before it withers under neglect. Poirot noted the way production paused, her breaths coming in quick succession. His gaze shifted to Victor, who wore an impassive mask concealing any sign of trepidation. Victor, what say you? More than a mere acquaintance? Were you not intertwined in the fabric of their lives? And what of the late Lady Ashcroft's sentiments regarding your ties? Victor replied with smooth nonchalance. A man must seize opportunity where it arises. Life forces us to dance upon the precipice. His words dripped, with a rich provocation, almost as if encouraging the darkest suspicions to take flight. For hours, Poirot picked through the layers of their testimonies, weaving a path through inventive half-truths and outright lies. The storm howled beyond the windows, yet within the fragmented conversations, a varying discord painted the closeness of deceit. He honed in on a particular detail, a hidden note slipped from Reginald's pocket during the chaos, a hurried scribbled acknowledgement of debts that hinted at extortion. Tension hung palpably in the air, and as the guests cast furtive glances among themselves, familiar with each other's foibles, Poirot sensed impending movements of revelation stirring in waited anticipation. Yet so ensnared was he in the apparent truths, he nearly overlooked a faint whispering sound. The fleeting rustle of fabric brushing against skin layered under the cacophony. He turned his gaze quickly, narrowing his eyes upon Claire. Pray, what is it you conceal beneath your shawl, my dear? Surely a true friend has no fear of transparency. She faltered, clutching the fabric tighter, but the twitch of her brow betrayed her. There lay a darkness carefully wrapped beneath. With the crowd tensing, Poirot continued. The heart harbors many agonies, yet one can deceive only for a time. But who here bears the true weight of sorrow? Tell me, what did you see on the staircase before this lamentable tragedy unfolded? Claire's lips parted, then quickly shut, again as if the weight of an unspoken truth would shatter her fragile composure. Just as the atmosphere reached its zenith, Poirot turned abruptly to Reginald's body, studying it intently. And then it struck him, like lightning, the angle of the arms, the blood pooling beneath. The realization unfolded, complex and spiraling. No, it cannot be, he breathed, shock ordering as his deduction ignited. Reginald Ashcroft had not been a victim at all. He had been a ruse, a staged murder to mask his own descent into darkness. Reginald, hidden among the guests, had himself betrayed Henrietta, leading her to hidden debts spun around greed and deception. But it was Claire who had lifted the veil from his fleeting secrets, setting forth this tragic dance of deception. Ah, but the human heart it betrays upon the grandest of stages, Poirot declared, his voice slicing through the tension. You sought to shield yourself, Claire, but you wielded not a dagger of steel, rather a mantle of secrets, over the truth dwelling too closely to your heart. Silence enveloped the room, the weight of revelation staining the air thick with disbelief. With one hand, Poirot gestured toward the darkened corners, shadows now feeling the weight of betrayal. For now the dance of deception has been unveiled, and I shall lay bare each mask worn tonight. How behind the glories of loyalty lies the icy hands of greed and malice. The finality throbbed within the silence as Poirot's gaze lingered upon Claire, unmasking a treachery that had hidden with deceptive charm. Justice, alors, must be served, he whispered, the echoes of truth fading into the gathering storm, leaving the guests trembling in the flickering candlelight, their hearts forever altered by the intimate dance of betrayal. Chapter 4. Blood on the Dance Floor. An eerie silence enveloped the grand hall, the once vibrant atmosphere clouded now with an unspeakable dread. The candles cast flickering shadows that danced along the walls, and, in their dim light, one could almost feel the heartbeat of the house itself, a pulsing reminder of the secrets buried deep beneath its veneer of elegance. Suddenly, a chilling scream shattered the stillness, reverberating through the air with a sharpness that cut like glass, punctuating the tension that had been building since Reginald Ashcroft's untimely demise. Poirot paused, his mind racing, and scanned the opulent room where betrayal and grief still clung like oil to water. In the throes of chaos, the guests were jolted from their stupor, eyes wide with horror. The noise had emitted from the corner where Claire Fontaine stood, her face ghostly pale, expression locked in a dreadful rictus. There, sprawled across the ornate mahogany dance floor, lay the body of Victor Hale, his lifeblood pooling like crimson petals around him, stark against the polished wood. Poirot felt his pulse quicken, not from fear, but from the throes of a mystery that had deepened in the wake of a new death. Mon Dieu, Poirot murmured softly, approaching the scene with the grace of a panther. What a tangled web we weave, he thought, for in death Victor bore the mark of unending despair. Poirot knelt beside the body, taking in the details, the exquisite cufflinks, a gift from Lady Henrietta, now smeared with evidence of violence. The surrounding guests' faces morphed into masks of shock, yet behind their feigned grief lay shadows of guilt. His gaze fell on Claire, how her eyes flickered with a mixture of anguish and something far darker, a secret locked tight within. Lady Amelia, your thoughts? Poirot called, turning his attention to the trembling woman who had been closest to Victor at the time of his collapse. What transpired here mere moments ago? She caught her breath, visibly shaken, and shook her head slowly. I do not know, Monsieur Poirot. We were speaking, and then he just fell. Poirot tilted his head, studying her closely. But are you certain you were merely discussing innocuous matters? Perhaps the proximity of the dance floor wafted the scent of betrayal? Her brow knitted, betraying an inner tension conflicting with her calm facade. Lady Amelia hesitated, glancing at Claire, whose rigid posture seemed almost too still. Victor spoke of people he once knew, of debts and negotiations long overdue. Then, nothing. A sudden clatter interrupted their discourse as Reginald's name surfaced amidst the whispers. The guests exchanged furtive glances, and Poirot noted how sorrow and resentment commingled in their eyes. It was Claire who broke the thickening silence. Victor had dreams, ambitions that he rarely shared, perhaps interlaced with the shadows of his past, and she said, her voice barely above a whisper, laced with an uncharacteristic resonance. What shadows might those be? Poirot pressed, sensing an uncertainty linger behind her words. Claire stiffened, clutching her shawl closer to her shoulders. You forget, Monsieur Poirot, we are all bound in a dance of deceit, are we not? What is hidden often stays unfound. Every word dripped with implications, but Poirot's gaze sharpened on a detail overlooked by the others. The scuff marks around Victor's feet, suggesting a struggle that had unfolded in that very moment. He felt a presence looming. No, a depth of connection interwoven among them all. The sudden change in the atmosphere brought a bitter chill to his spine. As he resumed his investigation, Poirot turned to Claire, trying to grasp any hidden truths. What of your relationship with Reginald, my dear? Do you not recall your words exchanged prior to his death? Marred in betrayal and overshadowed by ambition, could there be a connection between this and Victor's demise? The tremor in her voice gave away another truth, though she masked it behind a curtain of bravado. Reginald was a frivolous man, addicted to extravagance. He had little regard for the debts he amassed. She paused. You speak of betrayal, but surely you question his engagement with Henrietta's fortune? Would it not compel him to silence those who dared to unearth his secrets? Ah, but the human heart, it hides many things, mon ami, Poirot replied gently, allowing the tension to mount. Each heartbeat echoed in the heavy air, saturated with despair and cruelty. Poirot's inquisitiveness led him to Victor's belongings, wherein he found a concealed pocket containing a folded note inscribed with hurried scrawl, a warning perhaps, or a cry for help. He carefully unfolded it, revealing a namesake intertwined with debts that connected Victor, Claire, and Reginald. Each line was a revelation, a bridge to a past not easily forgotten. Here lay a whispered threat of exposure, stained with red ink, a harbinger of revenge, perhaps a death knell. Turning back to the group, Poirot felt uncertainty ripple through the air. Time blurred, and as he pieced together the fragments of truth, He followed thoughts that danced behind Claire's eyes. All were mired within an emotion that would soon erupt: rage, betrayal, desperation. But from whom would the final blow be struck? As he interrogated each guest, Poirot observed the deceptive play of their masks, impeccable performers adept at concealing their darkest desires. Yet one truth remained unmistakably clear. The floor was indeed stained, not only with blood, but with the echoes of deep-seated disloyalty. One individual might still be lurking, waiting for the right moment to strike once more. Poirot's breath caught with the realization. The note bore not Victor's name as the target, but rather Claire's. It was she who might find herself deftly entwined in a treacherous game of penury, someone resolutely driven by the need to protect her newfound status from a specter of financial ruin that would cast a long shadow upon her aspirations. As the final pieces clinked together in the grand puzzle, Poirot locked his gaze upon Claire. Her figure seemed to waver within the confines of her carefully curated veneer. In that moment, he understood that the final act of betrayal loomed high above them all. With eerie certainty, he turned to the group, summoning them with an unyielding resolve that would bring forth justice. "Ladies and gentlemen," he declared, his voice resolute yet quiet, "the masquerade is at an end, and it is time that each of you recognize that the heart, stripped bare, serves as both instrument and witness to the tragic dance of death, a dance that inexorably unfurls not just upon the innocent, but upon those whose secrets lie just below the surface. Prepare to unshackle the truth that binds you all, and thus marks its authors on the floor of this tragedy." The air shivered with anticipation as Poirot prepared to unveil the intricate web of deceit, where every secret hid another, and in that darkness, with blood staining the dance floor, he would reveal who truly remained behind the mask. Chapter 5. Secrets of the Masquerade. Lightning clawed at the skies outside, illuminating the grand hall and casting jagged shadows that whispered of chilling secrets and lingering dread. As thunder rumbled ominously in the distance, a palpable tension enveloped the opulent room, trapping the guests in a quagmire of uncertainty. It was within that storm-battered sanctuary that newly unveiled truths clashed with deceptive facades, each guest wrapped in their own web of treachery. Poirot stood at the center of it all, a small, polished figure emerging from the chaos, steady as the eye of the storm. The recent deaths of Reginald Ashcroft and Victor Hale hung heavily in the air, ghostly specters of betrayal, leaving an indelible mark on those assembled. Around him, three figures emerged, each cloaked in suspicion, their past entangled in a tapestry of lies and ambition. First there was Claire Fontaine, radiant yet marred by shadows of regret. Her enchanting demeanor had smoldered brightly among the guests of the evening, but the truth of her past threatened to eclipse her present. A woman of means reduced to navigating an abyss of greed and yearning, she had tangled herself in a web of relationships designed to elevate her status, leaving behind a trail of whispered debts that could undo her. Poirot considered, but the human heart, it hides many things, mon ami. Next stood Lord Marcus Thorne, an acquaintance of both victims whose suave exterior belied a roiling sea of resentment. His wealth was vast, yet the loss of his beloved sister to Victor's reckless schemes stifled his ability to forgive. What fuels such a fire, Poirot pondered, sensing the resentment that crackled around Marcus like aftershocks of a tempest. The stormy relationship between the two men had been marked by abrupt exchanges and hasty apologies, indicating that forgiveness had long since been abandoned to the winds of malice. Finally, Lady Amelia, the often overlooked cousin of Claire, hovered at the periphery. Her eyes darted nervously, revealing the fragility beneath her otherwise demure facade. Once enamored with Victor, she had become entangled in his nightmares, trailing behind him like a ghost seeking for solace amid despair. Yet buried beneath layers of sadness was a ferocity disguised as loyalty, a darkness that would reveal itself if pushed. The tension peaked as Poirot addressed the room, fear coursing through those gathered. "My dear guests," he began, his voice laced with an elegance that soothed the chaos befouling the hall, "we find ourselves standing amongst shadows where truth and deception twist and conjoin, and herein lies the heart of our mystery. The flame of the candles flickered, illuminating faces heavy with unspoken secrets, each caught in a masquerade of their own making. The storm echoed as the inquiry began, intent on peeling back the layers each one had so carefully crafted. Poirot's sharp eye and keen intuition captured the smallest of details. A fleeting glance here, a clenched fist there, swells of emotion rising and falling among them like the tide. He began with Claire, gliding up to her with a confidence that belied his relentless scrutiny. "Dear Claire, what recollections might you hold of Victor during your final interactions? Could it be there lurks an emotion cloaked behind your alluring visage?" Benign feigned composure faltered as Claire stiffened slightly, her mind racing. "Nothing of significance, Monsieur Poirot. Our conversations were naught but trivialities, sufficient for polite company." Her nervous laughter did little to conceal the tremors in her voice as her gaze dropped, betraying a secret she dared not voice. With an observant flourish, Poirot shifted to Lord Marcus. "And you, my lord? You harbored resentment for the man who devastated your family. Tell me, what knowledge did you carry in your heart when speaking with Victor?" A moment of silence lingered, heavy with tension, before the lord's composure cracked, revealing anger's raw edges. Victor was a charlatan masquerading as a gentleman. A calamity driven by ambition had led him to my family's ruin. But tell me, Poirot, have you examined the scuff marks left upon the dance floor where Victor met his demise? As it was not his blood alone that colored the wood with sorrow. The hint of illicit knowledge wrapped that specter of guilt around him, even as he veiled it behind bold claims, further entrenching their suspicions. As tension escalated, Lady Amelia, who had remained silent, observing, entangled her own feigned innocence with an urgent interjection. Victor meant his words, though blinded by his arrogance. He was well aware how deeply debt can wound, she murmured, a tremor racing through her voice as it bore witness to the tumult brewing underneath. With each inquiry, Poirot dulled the edges of false hope and surfacing deceit. His focus shifted to the light that flickered from the mantel, catching the reflection on Victor's cufflinks as he studied the guests anew. Every glimmer held a secret, an indictment. Then, like the lightning illuminating the sky, a realization struck him. The masquerade, it thrives upon the fool's errand of concealment, altering perspectives through veils of intimacy. In that challengingly omnipresent silence, Poirot noticed a glint. A note had slipped, perhaps unnoticed, from Lady Amelia's glove, a hurried reminder or an ultimatum. He approached with an elegant grace, his inquiry direct and profound. "Ah, how delicate appears this note. Pray, what might be the heart's demand that lies inscribed upon it?" Amelia hesitated, but Poirot continued, unyielding. "Was it wisdom or a warning? Did this tether you to Victor or draw you closer to darkness?" As the room held its breath, the note unfolded. Inscribed within lay a bitter entreaty, threats of exposure entwined with her own secrets, demanding a deliverance only Amelia could provide. The deception that had clouded the hall slowly parted as Poirot's astute realization crystallized. She was prolonging the masquerade for survival, the heart's betrayal woven tight, yet the true player moved among them unseen, masquerading under the light of innocence. "Justice is beautifully orchestrated by an unseen hand, n'est-ce pas?" he murmured softly, relishing the intricate dance of truth and betrayal. As the storm outside waned to a whisper, Poirot turned to face the assembly, unfurling the notes of discord. "Ladies and gentlemen, observe. The dance here this night is not one of celebration, but one that unfurls grief and duplicity alike. It remains the case that the simplest of decisions often leads to profound consequence, and ours is a fate entwined in an eternal masquerade, blinding us all." With that, Poirot unveiled the true connection tangled among the trio, as the final twist revealed Claire's dubious complicity in Victor's schemes of debt, a dance of survival that led to her unraveling. In revealing one's true self, we perhaps become the architects of our own demise, he concluded, leaving the guests trembling amidst candlelight and cries as the final curtain drew ominously closer. Chapter 6. A Fatal Invitation. Darkness draped over the estate like an ominous shroud, a brooding silence hanging heavy in the air. The wind howled, battering against the windows like the desperate cries of spirits locked in torment. In the dim light of the candlelit drawing room, a single scream pierced through the stillness, echoing ethereally, a haunting prologue to the unfolding tragedy. As Poirot, the indomitable detective, stood frozen, his mind unfurling like the pages of a fragile manuscript, a vital question began to take shape. Who among them was the harbinger of this imminent death? The wax flickered, casting dancing shadows that seemed to weave stories of their own, concealing more than they revealed. Claire Fontaine, whose luminous visage now quivered with bewilderment, was the first to break the silence, eyes wide with terror. "It cannot be. Not here. Not tonight." Her voice trembled as she pointed a quivering finger towards the body sprawled lifelessly upon the ornate Persian rug, blood pooling around the torso like a grotesque flower. Lord Marcus Thorne lay slain, a dagger protruding from his chest with a finality that sent a chill racing through the hearts of the onlookers. Poirot's discerning gaze swept across the room with sharpened intensity, absorbing the fear mirrored in the expressions of the assembled guests. Each face told a story, yet all shared a common thread: deception laced with dread. Lady Amelia, who had lingered just beyond the threshold of comprehension, retracted into the wall shadows, her features pale and ghostly. It was then that Poirot's astute psyche recognized the fabric of the room shifting, each heartbeat striking a dissonant chord of guilt and blame. "Ah, mon ami," he murmured under his breath. "The human heart is an intricate tapestry, stitched with both light and dark." With the storm's crescendo augmenting the chaos, the detective commenced his examination. "Please, my dear guests," he said, his voice steady, elegant as ever, "allow me to discern the permutations of this tragic tableau. Who here holds the dagger, a mere tool for misdeeds, buried deep?" He assessed their reactions. Claire's unsteady composure, Amelia's frightened fidgeting, and a flicker of undeniable glee flashing in the eyes of Benjamin Lockwood. Another acquaintance with ties to Marcus, a recent business partner turned possible rival. Lord Thorne had his enemies, thus the question arises: who among you would conspire against such a man? Poirot's penetrating inquiry lingered in the air, laced with palpable tension. Each character stood in accusatory silence, shadows stretching like accusing fingers, gripping their secrets tighter. Acting against the swirling tempest of emotions, Poirot guided his investigation like a conductor, leading an orchestra, weaving between truths and half-lies. First he approached Claire, who leaned against the mantelpiece, her breath catching painfully. "Dearest Claire, you professed a fondness for Lord Marcus. Pray tell, what could lead one to mar such esteem with a dagger?" Her gaze sank to the floor as if seeking comfort in its cold embrace. I adored him, but he was entangled, marred by debts," she whispered, eyes glistening, revealing an emotion beyond mere nostalgia. Was it jealousy, perhaps? Next he turned to Lady Amelia, her delicate features, betraying an unusual resolve amid the clamorous chaos. "And you, dear lady?" Perhaps those lingering affections for Victor stirred untold resentments. "Tell me, what did you hope to gain?" For an instant, confusion flickered in her eyes before she found composure. "I wanted peace, not more pain," she replied, forcing the words through clenched teeth, revealing an urgency that belied her composed facade. Finally, Poirot engaged Benjamin Lockwood, whose demeanor oscillated between oblivion and deception as he fidgeted with his cufflinks. "Your connection with Marcus was founded upon ambition. What say you to the notion of rivalry? The friend turned fiend?" At the sound of his name, Benjamin's face paled, yet a wry smile curved upon his lips, inches from a confession. "Competition, Poirot, is quite natural in our circles. But to murder?" The words hung between them, fragile yet laden with uncertainty. As night dragged into a darker mood, Poirot paused amidst the gathering storm. His discerning eye caught something amiss. A perfumed note ejected itself from beneath Amelia's glove as she fumbled, drawing close to him, evidence brandished like a concealed weapon. "What is this?" he inquired, drawing closer with dramatic flair, a hawk circling its prey. Slowly, she relinquished possession of the note, revealing scripted ink that chronicled secrets veiled deeper than mere friendship. But as the threads of suspicion wove tighter, Poirot's instincts felt a ripple, a possibility. Even his sharp mind had missed. An inkling nudged his consciousness and morphed into revelation. He recalled a forgotten shadow behind Claire's radiant visage, a spark of jealousy, a darker desire engulfing her need for acceptance. Ah, the dance of secrets is often a masked ball, he mused, knowing betrayal could spring from unexpected places. As lightning illuminated the darkness once more, he revisited the enigmatic note and dissected its contents. It read like a desperate plea interwoven with threats, a call that hinted at a facade peppered by harsh truths. As he pieced the final moments together, an explosive understanding dawned upon him, sweeping away all traces of uncertainty. The dagger and the debt were dance partners, circling in a tragic choreography designed to destroy. In a pivotal moment, Poirot gathered the assembly once more, drawing the curious eyes toward him. My esteemed guests, it appears the question is no longer about the who but the why. Was this death not simply sourced from revenge bred in avarice? What better way to hide betrayal than to cloak oneself in the shadows? He regarded Claire, now constricted by her own secrets, while Amelia's sorrow morphed into fear. As the storm finally settled, a silence enveloped them all, each heartbeat tethered to the unresolved mystery. The truth, Poirot intoned, is often double-minded, and within that complexity lies our greatest fears. Betrayal does not wear a singular face, nor does it possess only one motive. With all truths, lies, and deceptions laid bare before them, Poirot finally unveiled the true player among them. Lord Marcus had indeed preyed upon the weaknesses of those in his orbit, triggering a fatal invitation that had entangled Claire in Victor's schemes, prompting her to react. The dagger was not a mere instrument of death, but a misguided response to an unseen hand of manipulation. As the guests stood agape, their secrets entangled like the vines creeping over the estate, Poirot's final words lanced through the air, an ethereal reminder echoing through the silent room. In the end, my friends, we become the architects not just of our own fates, but destroyers of others' destinies. The weight of truth settled heavily as a sense of finality washed over the room, the storm finally yielding to a fragile dawn, leaving everyone forever changed. Chapter 7. The Missing Piece. A piercing shriek erupted from the shadows of the grand hall, slicing through the suffocating silence of the night. The candles flickered violently, casting grotesque shapes upon the walls, their flame dancing like the despair gripping the hearts of those present. Poirot, poised like a statue, his impeccable attire untouched by the chaos, regarded the source of the cacophony. The lifeless form of Lady Amelia, her delicate frame sprawled across the cold marble floor. A single crimson rose cradled almost tenderly in her hand, a haunting juxtaposition of beauty and demise. Thus began a brutal unraveling of secrets buried beneath the delicate facade of elegance. As the storm outside raged, thunder mixing with the silent gasps of the gathered guests, Poirot's mind whirred with curiosity and dread. Through the shifting shadows, he noticed Claire Fontaine pale and trembling near the grand fireplace, her eyes wide with terror and guilt. Benjamin Lockwood, his face a mottled canvas of shock and anger, stood rigid by the staircase, while Victor Devereux, loose-limbed but visibly shaken, clutched the banister like a lifeline, his sharp features twisted in disbelief. "Ah, mon ami," Poirot thought silently, his inner voice serene amid the storm's intuition. "What a delicate mess we find ourselves entangled in." Poirot approached the now iconic figure of Lady Amelia, noted the subtle but unmistakable tremor in the petals of the rose, indicative of haste. Did it not imply a connection to someone who had been drawn closer in those final moments? And where, might he ask, had the hateful blade slipped into her heart? He asked this question aloud, his elegant accent wrapping around the words like silk. "Pray tell, possessors of shadowed hearts, who among you dared extinguish such light?" As the assertion lingered heavily in the air, Claire found her voice, a tremulous whisper laden with guilt. "She was a friend. We shared secrets. She..." Her words stumbled into silence, eyes darting toward Victor, who now bore an unsettling calmness, the kind seen moments before, tumultuous storms. And yet, Victor interjected with an edge, would it not be just like her to play the part of a martyr, forever in the throes of drama? Poirot's sharp eyes caught the small play of light reflecting off a broken cufflink, abandoned amid the clutter. Monsieur Lockwood, he inquired, tilting his head slightly, it seems your opulent attire has suffered an unfortunate fate. Might that tell a tale of unnoticed treachery? Benjamin's face contorted, exposing a fleeting flash of confusion, but it quickly morphed into outrage. Do not presume to implicate me, Poirot. Lady Amelia was a vital part of our endeavors. Her demise would only serve the interests of those hunting for power. His indignant defense rang hollow, echoing through the dimly lit chamber like the faint tolling of a bell. But Poirot, ever discerning, was quick to probe deeper. Time slithered forward. The seconds turned into excruciating minutes as Poirot meticulously gathered fragments of essence from each suspect. He noted Claire's fidgeting fingers, the way her gaze never settled, a mind wrestling with more than mere fear. There it was, a glimmer of deep-rooted resentment simmering beneath that facade of innocence. And you, Claire, perhaps the bitterness of your last encounter with Amelia warrants scrutiny? Jealousy does have a habit of transforming the heart, does it not? He allowed the weight of his words to hang palpably in the air, watching her reaction closely. Yet the darkest shadows were creeping ever closer, and Poirot suspected something lay amiss with Victor as well. He bore the hallmark of a man versed in deceit, his casual laughter less a balm and more akin to a dagger poised for a well-timed strike. Victor, Poirot bent slightly forward, have you considered the possibility that, in your entwinements, enemies do gather? Although she claimed to care for you, love can often be adorned in the guise of manipulation. With each word, he watched the mask of confidence slip, further from Victor's face. As Poirot navigated the heavy atmosphere, a hidden note quivered beneath one of the scattered petals, catching the dim light. With deft fingers, he plucked it from the ground, revealing lines of elegant script that wove a tale of betrayal, emotions entwined in anger and desperation. Ah, indeed, the heart is a labyrinth, my friends. His voice pierced through the tension. But in pursuing that which is concealed, our answers often unveil themselves in the moments of silent screams. The revelation ignited the suspect's interactions afresh as accusations flew like bullets. Claire's gaze, momentarily sharp, strayed towards the back of the room, and in that instant, Poirot paused. A shift in her demeanor, a glance too quickly disguised, set his mind racing. What had she known that remained cloaked? His stomach churned as he gathered the clues into a cohesive picture, forming an image of Lady Amelia restless in a dance of secrets, torn between allegiance and jealousy. Then, as if orchestrated by fate, Benjamin Lockwood stepped forward, a flood of defiance lighting up his features. I shall reveal the truth. Lady Amelia and I... He hesitated, suspicion flickering across his face, a pause laden with guilt. But before he could articulate the twisted narrative threading through their lives, the shadows shifted once again, revealing a deeper layer of enmity. She was going to expose Victor. Benjamin's voice rang through the darkness with a vehement intensity. She knew what he had done. The last glow of candlelight flickered ominously as Poirot finally completed the puzzle. It became increasingly clear that revenge was but a mask for love lost and rivalries born from desperation. Yet it was Claire who broke with a piercing cry, an anguished admission unveiling the tangled loyalty that linked each of their destinies. It was my love for Marcus that brought Amelia too close to Victor's schemes. I feared losing my freedom, my very breath. So, I sought salvation, but in seeking it, I drew death instead. Poirot regarded the bewildering dance with a heart heavy with the weight of unfulfilled intentions. Would justice, so intricately woven into their lives, reveal itself as their greatest torment? The bittersweet taste of betrayal loomed in the air, a reminder of the human struggle perpetually dancing upon the precipice of deceit. With one final sweep of his piercing gaze, Poirot turned back to the assembly, a confident yet pained countenance delineated. My esteemed friends, it appears even the most brilliant mask cannot conceal the fractured soul within. With that, he unveiled the damning truth. The missing pieces had finally coalesced, allowing every hidden emotion to bleed freely into the dim light. As the night reached its zenith, Poirot addressed them with eloquence, yet enveloped in unyielding despair. We are but players in this grim masquerade, and often it is within our betrayals that we lose not just those we seek to protect, but ourselves. The room descended into a heavy silence, as the storm outside murmured a mournful accompaniment, a disquieting reminder of lives forever altered by the tragic dance of deception. Chapter 8. Shadows of the Past. A soft sob echoed through the lifeless halls, a haunting melody entwined with the low growl of distant thunder. Outside, the tempest raged, as if nature itself had chosen this night to lay bare the secrets of an anguished soul. In the flickering candlelight, Hercule Poirot stood amongst the debris of both heart and heritage, surveying the tragic scene that lay before him. A once vibrant drawing room, now morphed into a gallery of despair, bearing witness to the weight of untold truths that lingered in the air like a thick fog. The lifeless body of Reginald Blackwood lay sprawled across the ornate Persian rug, disbelief painted across his finely chiseled features. His dark eyes, once filled with determination, now gazed blankly into eternity. A silver brooch gleamed oddly amidst the shadows, its shape an unfamiliar omen for those gathered in the room. Poirot's sharp mind raced with the implications of what he had witnessed only moments before. One fateful plunge of a dagger, an act laden with betrayal, leaving behind a cacophony of emotions fraught with suspicion. Reginald was not merely a man of wealth, he was a businessman of notorious reputation, motley threads of deceit woven into his past. Against the backdrop of the night's chaos stood three figures, each harboring a tangled web of their own. Genevieve, the ex-fiancée whose heart had been shattered by Reginald's infamous betrayal, sullied by the lure of wealth. Jasper, Reginald's childhood friend, who had silently believed in dreams of shared fortune, but now felt the sharp sting of envy. And lastly, Lillian, the mysterious woman adorned in layers of chiffon, her presence cloaked in evanescence, yet with histories entwined with those around her. Ah, but the human heart, it hides many things, mon ami, Poirot pondered silently, scrutinizing the ashen faces surrounding him. Genevieve stood rigid, her hands trembled, perhaps not from fear, but from the knowledge that too long she had borne the emotional weight of unresolved vendettas. Jasper, his brow knitted in a mask of tension, cast sidelong glances with a hint of something that stirred intrigue and suspicion. Lillian, however, seemed almost unfazed, her smile betraying no tremor despite the murder blighting their sanctuary. What facade lies behind that shrouded charm? Poirot mused, ever alert for the smallest of clues. As the candlelight flickered ominously, Poirot began his inquiries. "Pray tell, dear guests," he inquired, his voice unyieldingly calm. "Might we recount the moments leading to this tragic loss?" Genevieve's voice trembled as she recounted the evening's events, speaking of their last conversation, filled with bitterness and unresolved emotions. "He wished to unite our fortunes once more, only to reveal another woman by his side deemed more worthy," she declared, fury mingling with heartbreak, a real motive for passionate lamentation. Yet Poirot found himself unwinding Genevieve's seemingly straightforward narrative, sensing fabrications lurking in the shadows. The storm outside unfurled further turmoil, as Jasper recounted a tale spun in the threads of insecurities that draped the rich tapestry of their youth. "Reginald laughed at dreams we once shared," he spat, hands clenched by unsuccessful restraint. But all the while, he sought not to build, but to dismantle. His outrage fell flat, a reach without substance. Was it indeed envy that pierced his heart, or had betrayal taken hold in an altogether different manner? Poirot's eyes narrowed, detecting the currents within the man's voice that clashed against his continued nonchalance. And then there was Lillian. The air shimmered with unsettling contrast as she remarked lightly, "Reginald had strong nerves, one might commend him for that." Bearing no fear for falling from grace, clearly, she had said, glancing down at the brooch that now sparkled with an unsettling brilliance. Lillian's disconnection felt almost rehearsed, as though she reveled in her role. Yet the subtle tremor in her voice hinted at something deeper, a connection forged from pain long withheld. What past sins tie you to him, I wonder? Poirot mused silently, watching every flicker of emotion. As Poirot wove through the labyrinth of concealed truths, he approached the brooch, its shimmer now revealing itself as a possible lead. Its design, a motif from a long-forgotten tale, could unveil connections buried within time. This brooch, he remarked, addressing them all, is not merely ornamental. It represents legacies entangled with jealousy, ambition, and perhaps regret. The tension rose, weaving a tapestry of accusations, each thread sharper than the last. "I lost him to you," Genevieve Eon shrieked at Lillian, her catharsis surfacing through tears, an eruption of sentiments carried by years of heartbreak. Lillian, unfazed, merely responded with a chilling smile. And yet, charm was never lost on a Blackwood. You see, Reginald could play a game far more dangerous than any you imagine. "Ah, but perhaps you were the puppeteer all along," Poirot countered, sensing a dance of wits. Within this swirl of chaos, a revelation emerged, spectacularly arresting yet treacherously blinding. Lillian was not merely a muse, but a master of manipulation. As he probed deeper, unearthing fragments of the past, a forgotten letter, yellowed by time, slipped from beneath Jasper's cuff. "You would do well to consider your next words carefully," Poirot warned, inspecting the curled paper that awaited revelation. The correspondence, laced with venomous charm, was a love letter penned not to Genevieve, but to Lillian, a fatal window into past betrayals now surfacing to challenge the present. Did Reginald discover something he shouldn't have? Poirot mused aloud, compiling shards into a cohesive theme of love lost and vengeance sought. Was your infatuation, Jasper, a dagger aimed at those who stole your very dreams? The interplay of glances shifted abruptly, revealing fault lines beneath seemingly solid facades. An emotional tempest did brew. Yet, in a final twist, as the candlelight bent and swayed against the storm outside, it was Genevieve who first shattered the silence, her voice a mere whisper. "It was you all along. You manipulated us." Against her adversaries, betrayal and mourning twisted together in a cruel embrace, revealing Lillian's darker intentions grounded in loss, daring to claim her right through chaos. "Alas, dear friends," Poirot declared with grief evident in his eyes, "betrayal knows no allegiances. Therefore, it begets its own undoing." The storm rumbled, echoing the tremors of hearts entwined, as Poirot stood amidst a tempest of fractured souls, forever encumbered by shadows of the past. A strong lesson cast in the flickering remnants of candlelight, that in the echoes of despair there may lie a grim justice, veiling the pain of lost, irreplaceable connections. And with that, his final words lingered in the heavy air, a resonance not soon to be forgotten. In seeking to destroy another, one's own soul stands entirely jeopardized. Chapter 9. A Game of Lies. The moon hung low in the storm-laden sky, its pallid light flickering through the serried branches of an ancient yew tree, casting long shadows that danced ominously across the gravel path. As the wind whistled through the night, a sudden, anguished scream severed the silence, reverberating through the cold air. It was a sound steeped in despair. Anguish turned raw and desperate. Beneath the weight of the heavy rain, they found him. Lord Arthur Bexley, sprawled lifelessly on the floor of his secluded study, his face frozen in a mask of horror, a single, crimson stain blooming on his silk cravat. Hercule Poirot, summoned from the depths of an agonizing game of whist, arrived breathless yet dignified. The flickering of the chandelier cast eerie shapes upon the walls, revealing the dim truths of the room. He surveyed the scene with a practiced eye, noting the thick carpet drenched at its edges by the sporadic rain, and the parchment scattered across the polished oak desk, one of which bore a shocking message: "Trust no one." The darkness seemed alive, pulsating with secrets and intentions hidden beneath the guise of civility. Gathered around the room, three figures hovered within the shadows, their expressions betraying a cauldron of emotions. Lady Seraphina Bexley, the grieving widow, her cheeks stained with tears that glimmered in the candlelight as she gazed fiercely at the lifeless form of her husband. Next to her stood Edgar Whitmire, Lord Arthur's closest confidant, his demeanor rigid, nerves flecked with anger masked by shock. Lastly, Felicity Grant, an enigmatic friend of the family, shrouded in mystery and wrapped in a veil of secrets, her eyes darting anxiously, as if unsure whether to mourn or flee. Mon ami, Poirot addressed the air, though it felt like a personal affront to the shadows themselves. The human heart within these walls speaks in riddles most strange. He approached the body carefully, noting the absence of a weapon, yet a tension lingered as palpable as the scent of damp wood. This was no accident. Here lies a tragedy crafted within the mind of cunning hands. Lady Seraphina, her anguish raw, broke the silence with an unsteady voice. He was to abandon me, Hercule. He spoke of a new life, a freedom purchased at the expense of our vows. Her gaze fell upon Felicity, then back to Poirot. What could possibly have driven him to such treachery? Was it not love that united us? The tension thickened like the fog outside, the truth lurking just beyond reach. Edgar crossed his arms, masking a furious vulnerability. Your husband was not what he appeared to be, Seraphina. He dabbled in connections most dubious, all the while teetering on the edge of betrayal. A hint of mistrust tinged his tone, his eyes narrowing as he cast a sidelong glance at Felicity. Perhaps his heart wandered too close to yours. Did it not, Felicity? The accusation hung in the dense air, igniting sparks beneath the surface. Ah, but the whispers of the past hold no merit in unraveling the present. Poirot interjected, keen to steer the conversation towards clarity. Each participant, he noted, bore their own burden cloaked in secrecy. He turned his attention to the scattered papers upon the desk, his keen eyes sifting through remnants of uncertainty. What say you, dear friends, to the contents of these letters? Surely they hold crucial tales of your collective folly. As Poirot continued his inquiries, he discerned beneath the facade of grief a dizzying tapestry woven from deceit. Lady Ikonaichoyidi, Seraphina's anguish posed a vulnerability, but wrapped within it, Poirot sensed an undercurrent of calculation. Edgar's anger perhaps belied an unrequited love. Felicity, an ever-watchful guardian of secrets, held too many strings leading to the heart of the mystery. Each clue drew him deeper into their world, yet under each question lay a red herring, casting deceptive shadows upon the truth. There lies a passage marked by mutual envy, said Poirot, as is often the case among those who dwell in shadows. Tell me, Felicity, where were you at the time of Lord Bexley's demise? The rain may have concealed much, but secrets always find their way to the surface. Her eyes momentarily flickered with discomfort, betraying her innocent facade. I was tending to my studies, she stammered. Yet something in her posture suggested a greater deception where kindness should reside. I had no reason to harm Arthur. The sharpness in her tone attempted to mask the quiver of uncertainty. Poirot noted the peculiar crease in a letter that slipped from her grasp, its ink still glistening wet with hasty ink. Its contents overlaid a thin veil of subtext, a private correspondence anchored in longing, imploring intimacy. Could it be the final piece of a tragic puzzle? Had Felicity nurtured more than mere friendship? The investigation spiraled enigmatically through corridors of suspicion, with each encounter unveiling more than merely words. An offhand remark from Edgar spoke of loans and debts, entwined with dark dealings, a shadowy association with a wagering criminal whom Arthur had once betrayed. He sought vengeance, you see. Perhaps this blood spills for his debts reclaimed? The accusation rang sharply within the dim study, claiming residence in the storm of betrayal that churned outside. Yet the rain rattled against the panes, a distraction Poirot endeavored to disregard as he pieced together their interconnected lives. The web of lies pulsed, both Edgar's fury and Felicity's. Despair was palpable, though beneath those currents resided a betrayal too intimate to remain hidden. As Poirot poised to unveil the final threads, The unsteady candlelight cast flickering contours that seemed to twist their features grotesquely. With the storm raging outside, Poirot gathered the trio, the suspense curling around them like the shadows embracing the walls. "It is here, my friends, that the game reveals its depths," he pronounced solemnly. "A truth so profound it ignites the very core of your being. Arthur's death was neither spurred by jealousy nor betrayal, but rather by a darker force lurking beneath the surface. And who, pray tell, could cast such a pall?" Edgar's voice broke, raw with desperation. "Your inequality of affections has shrouded the matter in confusion, my dear friends. It was neither your love nor your pain that concluded your bonds. The wound is inflicted by one who walks amongst us, masked in pity." With that, Poirot pointed a steady finger toward Seraphina. "You, dear lady, held the dagger that severed life from breath. Your sentiment bore a sharp edge. For as Arthur sought freedom, you conspired with a darkness known only to you." Gasps darted around the room, terror clashing with disbelief. "You dare claim I—" "Ah, but it is the truth," Poirot interjected, his expression hardening into resolve. "Your dependency bred suffocation, a desperate grasping at shadows. In revealing Arthur's heart, you sealed both his fate and your own." As tension swelled, another revelation quickened the air. The letter Felicity had dropped now bore a name etched within. An accomplice who conspired from the shadows, a hidden lover who, driven by passion, pushed Seraphina to the brink of tragedy. Now it became ominously clear that within the confounds of affection lay a labyrinth of pain, betrayal, and manipulated intentions, morphing each soul into a deadly pawn in a wretched game. In the culmination of breath, Poirot addressed them all with somber finality. "In this game of lies, one finds that when the heart propels us toward vengeance, it is the soul that we later seek to reclaim. You, dear Seraphina, have lost far, far more than you ever sought to destroy." As the truth settled heavily within the dim room, the tempest raged outside, its melancholy echoing the wretchedness born of ill-fated love. Poirot stood framed by candlelight, his silhouette a reminder of justice delivered, wounds unapologetically bared, and a solemn lesson, looming luminously in the gathered darkness. The answers whispered through the tumult hinted at a bitter echo. Betrayal devours the very essence of love. "Remember this, my friends," his voice cut through the stillness, unwavering. "In the pursuit of lies, one enkindles passions that beckon only sorrow, for in seeking to deceive another, one blurs the boundaries of one's own heart." Chapter 10. The Final Clue. The piercing shriek of an owl punctured the stillness of the night, sending a tremor of unease through the ancient walls of the Bexley estate. Rain drummed incessantly upon the slate roof, drowning out the distant rumble of thunder, which echoed the tumult of hearts within. Poirot, his heart attuned to the subtleties of human emotion, sensed the despair clinging to the air like a lingering specter. "Mon ami," he muttered softly to himself, "the shadows cast are not merely from the flame. They are born of our very souls, craving illumination." In the cold, flickering glow of the fireplace, shadows danced eerily across the faces of those now gathered in the study. A hallowed ground turned crucible of secrets. Lady Seraphina, her face pale and drawn, clutched a lace handkerchief, the delicate fabric now a battleground for her tears. Edgar Whitmire fidgeted beside her, his fury simmering beneath the surface, a tightly coiled spring just waiting for the slightest provocation. Felicity Grant, watching from the far corner, appeared calm yet utterly unnerved. Her eyes darted, furtively revealing an undercurrent of mischief that betrayed her tranquil visage. The scene of death was still fresh, a chilling whisper of the first victim haunting the room, where Lord Arthur Bexley once exuded charm and charisma. Now that charm lay extinguished, leaving behind only the echoes of betrayal and sorrow interwoven in the very fabric of his being. Poirot moved through the room with purpose, allowing his keen eyes to revel in the smallest of details. A footprint in the damp carpet, the absence of an ink bottle on the desk, and the faint scent of lavender haphazardly masked by the overpowering aroma of wood smoke. "Fear not, dear friends," Poirot intoned, his voice sinking into the thick silence. For the truth is a hardy creature. It gleams brightly even when cloaked in the shadows of deceit. Edgar's laughter, a brittle sound devoid of humor, pierced the tension. You speak as though truth is some benevolent guardian, Poirot. It is a beast, ready to rip apart the very fabric of reality. I would caution you to tread lightly in this land of serpents. Ah, but the human heart, it hides many things, mon ami, Poirot replied, his gaze steady upon Edgar. And it is often in the tenderness of our affections that we discover our most grievous faults. With those words still echoing, Poirot directed his attention back to the scattered letters on the desk. One parchment caught his eye, crumpled and smeared with a dark, viscous stain. Blood, perhaps, or the ink of farewell words left unsaid. He picked it up delicately between his fingers, carefully examining the scrawl. The letter revealed a longing, an entreaty for Arthur to consider a reunion promised upon an abandoned promise. Yet the signature was a mystery, suggesting that Felicity had not been as benign as she appeared to be. Felicity, Poirot called, his voice steady and commanding. What do you make of this note? It strikes me as one born of desperation, or a twisted form of devotion. Felicity's composure faltered. The wayward flicker of her eyelashes betrayed her nervousness, and a blush crept to her cheeks. It is merely a correspondence, a figment of misunderstanding. How can a letter reveal the heart of one who has been cast astray by ungrateful souls? Poirot smiled gently, appreciating the length of her eloquence, yet aware of the jagged edges lurking just beneath. But it is often in the flourish of our pen, dear lady, that our truest intentions are unfurled. The tension in the room thickened, resembling the onset of a tempest anew, and Poirot shifted his focus to Lord Arthur's widow, whose grief still shrouded her intentions. Lady Seraphina, he began, watching the way she instinctively straightened her posture. What was it between you and Arthur that may have led to this unimaginable betrayal? Can it be that love bore a price too high? Poirot, you must understand, our marriage, while steeped in affection, teetered on the brink of despair. He wished to abandon our life together, to reforge his path in a way that I could never follow, she stammered, her voice trembling with righteous indignation. As a woman scorned, I am less than capable of the crime you accuse me of. Yet your heart remains tethered to that life of desperation, non? Have you sought to retain him through means most dark? Poirot pressed, watching her closely. The ember of guilt flickered beneath the surface, sending a stark chill through the heated confrontation. As the storm gathered strength outside, echoing the storm within, Poirot felt the gathering threads pulling taut. The interplay of love, vengeance, and hidden identities became intertwined within this warped reality. An innocuous bolt of lightning illuminated the room briefly, and Poirot noted the fleeting shadows that crossed Edgar's face. Ah, the human heart, Poirot exclaimed, a silken edge in his tone. It bears burdens unseen. Tell me, dear Edgar, what darkness do you shelter in the folds of your friendship with the deceased? For a moment Edgar stood frozen, his expression flickering between righteous anger and murky truth, before he spoke. Arthur owed his life to the strings I pulled on his behalf. It is inevitable that a man within the debt will find himself facing the wicked choices of his own folly. Just as Poirot began to delve deeper into Edgar's convoluted confessions, a sudden crash drowned their conversation, the heavy study door slamming open as thunder clapped above. "What is this?" came a voice laden with authority, as Inspector Warwick, a familiar face in the maze of mystery, entered the room. "I trust you have not yet laid claim to the one who reigns in culpability here, Poirot." Poirot froze, allowing the inspector's arrival to ruminate within him. Unbeknownst to the gathered parties, the shadows that threatened to consume them had shifted in the room, revealing an unexpected player on this chaotic stage. "Ah, mon ami," Poirot professed, a glimmer of insight swirling through his thoughts. "It seems the key is at once simpler and more profoundly tangled than I had surmised." Drawing upon the tensions that pulsed between Lady Seraphina and Edgar, he deciphered the nuances of their reaction to the revelation, a shared secret tearing them apart. For you see, as the tempest roared outside, their truce began to unravel. The letter Felicity had discarded mentioned a clandestine meeting, a proposal for escape, and a name that jolted Poirot to attention. A name linked both to Edgar's past and Serafina's desperate ploy. Lies, my friends, have layered this tapestry into a masterful deception. The heart, in its mischief, has pointed its finger at the wrong culprit, Poirot announced, pacing with purpose. While it is you, dear Edgar, who orchestrated this wretched tragedy, the handler of the blade comes from within the very darkness of your connection. Gasps rumbled through the room. The weight of sudden realization hung heavily in the air. Poirot's deductive reasoning coalesced into the very marrow of the night, revealing the web of lies that bound them all. Serafina's anguish gave birth to desperation, and Edgar, you sought to reclaim control through conflated love and betrayal. In this twisted maze of affections, the true villain emerged to be your very heart itself, the detective concluded, his words resonating with an almost poetic finality. The silence lingered, thick and oppressive as the rain fell, its drops a funeral, dirge to the heart. It was then finally that Poirot delivered the final sentence, steeped in both sorrow and justice. Beware the price of betrayal, my friends, for it is paid not just by the deceased, but also by those who stand among the living, forever entangled in a game of lies. Chapter 11. The Accusation. A piercing scream shattered the oppressive stillness of the Bexley estate, echoing off the damp stone walls like a ghostly lament. The sound, wrought with horror and desperation, emerged from the very heart of darkness where confusion reigned, a cacophony of turmoil fueling the thrumming storm outside. Poirot, always attuned to the delicate balance of humanity, felt the electrifying pulse of terror in the air, overshadowed only by the faint, lingering scent of injustice. Mon ami, he whispered to himself, it seems our game has yet to unveil its darkest card. In the dimly lit study, where shadows intertwined with candlelight, the atmosphere throbbed with a palpable tension. The guests, once mere figures within a tragic tableau, now shifted uneasily under the weight of suspicion that clung to them as insistently as the heavy rainfall drummed against the windows. Lady Serafina, her alabaster skin streaked with tears, bore the sheen of raw grief, juxtaposed with an unyielding resolve. Edgar Whitmire, his posture rigid as a coiled serpent, watched the turmoil unfold with an unreadable expression, a mask that only hinted at the chaos brewing beneath. Felicity Grant, poised yet restless, surveyed the scene with eyes that sparkled with suppressed secrets, a maelstrom of emotions lurking beneath her calm facade. What a curious turn of events, Poirot remarked, moving with purpose across the room. The heart, it seems, remains a fickle beast, one that drives us to mend or to shatter. But tell me, dear friends, who among us has wielded this sword of betrayal? The question hung heavily in the air, charged with an intensity that sent chills down their spines. Must you blame us all, Poirot? Edgar spat, his voice tinged with defensiveness. You paint us with a singular brush when there are innumerable shades of doubt here. Is not the past washed away in bitterness? Ah, but the past, it clings to us, like shadows that refuse to dissipate. Non, Poirot asserted, his keen eyes assessing the interplay of emotions swirling around him. Each of you holds a piece of this dreadful puzzle, though the picture it forms may not be what one expects. Within moments, Poirot's observant nature picked up on minute details, the flick of a glance here, the trembling of a hand there, each a memoir of what lay hidden. Felicity's fingers danced anxiously along the edge of her handkerchief, betraying the calm she attempted to project, and Serafina's shifted breaths betrayed the struggle between denial and acceptance. Tell me, Lady Serafina, he prompted, raising an eyebrow toward the widow, how does one reshape the remnants of love turned to ashes? Love, she repeated, her voice a hoarse whisper. What remains of love in a world consumed by hatred and betrayal? Arthur's ambitions took him away from me, lured by whispers far too enticing. I had thought that love could prevail, but naivete had misled me. A bitter smile fractured her porcelain features. And now our bright past lies obliterated amidst the wreckage of broken dreams. Poirot interjected, careful to tread lightly yet firmly. Eloquent words, dear lady, yet the heart may mask its cruelest intentions. Have you thoughts that could bring solace to a restless spirit? His eyes bore into her, each moment lingering in silence scarred by suspicion. As she faltered, the tension was interrupted by Edgar's sudden outburst. You, Poirot, harbor misconceptions. Wounded hearts often seek comfort in blame. For what have I, the faithful friend, received in this snare of deceit? Suspicion is cast upon me as if I were the serpent in Eden. Arthur's debts were burdensome. Did he not owe me a small fortune? Ah, Poirot noted thoughtfully. But debts can breed desperation, my friend, particularly under the cloak of ambition. How one manages a debt reveals much of a man's mettle. Desperation shone clear on Edgar's face as he stepped closer to Poirot, the hawkish gleam unwavering in his gaze. And what do you intend to examine, Poirot? Shall we sift through confessions? For each of us here has donned a mask. Shall we unveil our demons to find an inevitable conclusion? Poirot's gaze strayed to Felicity, whose silence spoke volumes of unacknowledged fears. Felicity, dear lady, he began with precision, you remain too cool, a tempest beneath the serene waters. What say you to the accusations that spiral about? Is there not a thread that you could pull from the tapestry of distrust? Felicity raised her chin defiantly, though the mirage flickered with uncertainty. I merely observed, Poirot, observed the chaos among you. To imbue my quietude with deceit would be beneath my character. Yet her eyes danced, betraying a flicker of a secret arcane. As the storm outside roared with renewed ferocity, Poirot began examining the clues scattered through the room. The shattered remnants of Arthur's past were strewn like fragments of sorrow. He traced his fingers over the crumpled letters on the desk, restoring each to an order imbuing context. Correspondence that spoke of desire, of clandestine meetings shrouded in twilight, tainted by their intertwined destinies. Moments later, another scream rent the air, more visceral than the first. The voice of Lady Seraphina crackled through like a withering flame, dissolving the fragile calm. It cannot be. How could you betray me, Edgar? She turned, a wild look infused with sorrow and anger dancing in her eyes, pointing a shaky finger towards Edgar. To seduce our trust with the weight of secrets not yet spoken. Speak. What have you to say? Edgar, momentarily frozen, seemed to congeal beneath the weight of her accusation. He stammered, grasping for the occupant of reason amid a tempest of unfurling revelations. I only wish to protect your dignity, Seraphina. Howls of wind bled through the oppressive silence, intertwining with the raw pain that erupted in the room. Poirot felt the air shift, electrons realigning, as the paths of betrayal converged dramatically. Ah, but the confusion of the heart can yield dire consequences, he murmured. Such is vengeance when cloaked in love. Yet which heart, I ask, remains true? With a keen expression, he surveyed the faces before him. It appears the shadows have thickened, not only with layers of deceit, but also with unacknowledged guilt. What if I were to propose that our misjudgments lie within ourselves? His eyes glimmered as he turned back towards Felicity. You were in correspondence with Arthur, dear lady, certainly a connection most cherished. Yet how has your heart conspired to intertwine with this web? What are you implying? She gasped, her facade cracking. No one here has the right to question my loyalty. He stepped closer, a hand raised in placation. Yet your eyes say more than your lips choose to permit. What hidden vendetta choruses between you both? For beneath your coolness lies the fire of hidden grievances. A nervous energy whipped among them, and the emotional turmoil surged anew, leaving them undone. Poirot had maneuvered them precisely to this nexus of confrontation. Let us speak plainly, he continued. The revelation is not simply imperative to your guilt, but to the very fabric of truth woven through betrayal. One must ask, who among us is the traitor? He allowed the silence to settle as storms quaked ferociously outside, whispering of moral ambiguity in an uncaring world, a cacophony of reckoning. The darkest betrayal often lives within, he concluded as the last pieces collided. And it is the heart, the very nature of self, that still plays a hand in this dreadful game. In the dim light, the truth surged forth. Felicity's connection to Edgar burgeoned beyond mere kinship, reflecting a darker alliance that played within the tragic tapestry of passion and betrayal. Poirot's piercing gaze lingered upon Edgar and Serafina before converging on Felicity, her carefully constructed mask fracturing under the weight of unveiling. "Take heed, my friends," Poirot spoke with deliberate calm, a weight echoing within his tone. "In this labyrinthine complex of love and despair, it is the pursuit of comfort that lay bare our greatest vulnerabilities. Let the heart not only heed the call for affection, but also the price of betrayal steeped in shadow." As the final truth illuminated the room, laughter twisted into a haunting irony that reverberated off the walls while betrayal revealed itself amidst the storm. The game unveils itself, amici, forever entwined by the misconceptions we dare to embrace. Chapter 12. The Last Waltz. A single echoing gasp shattered the stillness of the Bexley estate, reverberating through the still, rain-soaked corridors like the haunting refrain of a forgotten melody. The candlelight flickered, casting long shadows that danced eerily across the walls, while the relentless storm outside beat against the windows with a fury that mirrored the turmoil within. In the dimly lit ballroom, Lady Serafina stood paralyzed, eyes wide, as she cradled a lifeless form draped upon the polished floor, the remnants of a once joyful waltz, frozen in time. Poirot arrived moments later, his presence a strange mix of composed elegance amidst the chaos. He surveyed the scene with an acute awareness, a mind sharp as the blade of a fine couteau. "Mon ami," he whispered, lifting his gaze to the assemblage of faces twisted in horror. "What tragic opera has unfolded before us? For it appears we are not merely spectators, but unwilling participants in this ghastly theater of life and death." Before him sprawled Edgar Whitmire, his body, sprawled on the wooden floor, arms outstretched as if pleading for forgiveness from the heavens above. The lifeblood of a man once steeped in ambition silently pooled around him, a cruel irony saturating the air with the scent of despair. Lady Serafina, still recoiling from the horror, pointed an accusing finger, breaking the spell of shock. "He's dead! Dead by the hand of a traitor!" Her voice cracked, the tremor revealing the depths of her anguish. "Forgive me, dear lady," Poirot interjected, smoothly, "but do we possess any evidence that suggests foul play? Or is this a mere manifestation of grief twisting the fabric of reality?" He turned his attention to the remaining guests, three souls caught in a maelstrom of suspicion and secrets. Felicity Grant, Edgar's former confidant, Victor Hale, a distant cousin driven by desire for the family fortune, and Francesca Hill, a muse draped in mystery whose passion for both art and a fleeting romance with Edgar fueled her presence that night. Felicity, her composure a fragile veneer over roiling emotions, stepped forward, trembling fingers brushing against her throat as she stammered, "But Poirot, Edgar was to reveal his plans tonight. His ambitions were dark, but his death, it cannot be. That would mean—" She faltered, the implications hanging heavy in the charged air. "Dark and oppressive like the storm overhead." "Ah, but the human heart, it hides many things, mon ami," Poirot mused, his intelligent eyes narrowed with contemplation. "Each of you, it appears, holds a litany of truths shrouded within the cloaks of your own making." He turned to Victor, whose face held a mixture of dread and anger. "You, sir, stand close to the flame of ambition, yet your shadows suggest a different narrative lurking beneath the surface. What, I wonder, do you seek in this tragic tableau?" Victor, keeping his back straight, countered with a steely gaze. "Ambition? No more than familial loyalty, Poirot. Edgar met with his demise, not by my hand but through his own reckless schemes. He thought to seize the family estate, but he was ultimately ensnared by the traps he laid." His voice dripped with bitter animosity, a theatrical performance aimed at deflecting attention. Francesca interjected, her voice a soft dagger slashing through the tension. "And yet, Victor, you were seen frequenting Edgar's study in the days leading up to this tragedy. What secrets did you share, I wonder?" Her eyes sparkled with concealed glee, a facade of innocence cloaking deeper motives. As the storm raged on, Poirot busied himself sifting through the debris of Edgar's final hours. Each fragment unspooled layers of intention, the mantle of guilt draping heavily across the room's inhabitants. He examined the elegant Waltz card that sat abandoned on the mantelpiece, inked in Edgar's distinct handwriting, its subtlety yet suffused with arrogance. The passion reveals the contest. A dizzying danger lay within its lines, a promise of betrayal haunting each stroke. "Now tell me," Poirot demanded, the sharpness of his voice cutting through the widening circle of fear. "Was there a grand performance intended for this evening? A dance that the heart waged unbeknownst to all of you? What role do you play in this charade?" "What are you insinuating, Poirot?" Felicity choked, her usually poised demeanor crumbling like dry leaves underfoot. "Only that perhaps your connections run deeper than mere friendship, into the realm of passion turned to ire. For, within the intricate looms of connection, jealousy weaves its sinister web. Was there not a romantic bond that simmered, or did it bubble into something darker?" His observant eyes met Felicity's, challenging the pretense of innocence. That was the moment of distraction, the shifting of the eyes, the hint of a throat cleared too abruptly. A current of silent exchanges drifted between Victor and Francesca, an undercurrent of animosity just beneath their words. Felicity's brow furrowed with confusion, her discomfort palpable, eliciting a ripple of doubt in their collective conscience. Before Poirot could probe further, another scream shattered the confines of the space. Lady Seraphina once more. "No, not this! Please, no!" Clutching a crumpled letter, she surged forward, her expression a chaotic blend of rage and despair. "This letter! It was addressed to Edgar, but it describes a betrayal no one expected. Francesca, you loved him, did you not? You claim innocence, yet your name stains the truth." Francesca recoiled with a mix of shock and indignation. "I loved him, yes, but I would never harm him. We spoke of the future, dreams entwined, and yet Edgar was blind to the truth that enveloped us." Her voice trembled, revealing an intense vulnerability, a heart worn on the sleeve of grief. Poirot grasped upon the tension thickening in the air, the fleeting glances, the broken promises, the veils of ambition. As each character crumbled under the weight of their own sorrow, he saw through the gossamer threads of lies that intertwined them. Finally, with the energy spiraling around them, Poirot poised himself for the truth. "And so it has come to this," he stated, voice steady, each one marooned in despair, yet all concealing the same burden. "This death belongs to the very machinery of betrayal that thrived among you. But who, I ask, who held the dagger?" In that electric moment, revelations collided with the storm's crescendo. Felicity's trembling fingers had clenched something unseen as she turned the letter over in her hands. "How could you, Francesca?" she whispered, the words laced with undeniable emotion. "You have misled us all," Seraphina shouted, fury intertwined with incredulity. "You who claimed to console him during the night? You had secrets of your own all along." "But no," Francesca grasped the remnants of her dignity, eyes wide. "The letter speaks of a pact, a shared ambition to expose deeper truths. It was not a threat, but an opportunity for renewal that Edgar turned into a curse." Then Poirot unveiled the ultimate layer. "My dear friends, your ambitions and affections entwined birthed envy and rage. Let us ponder this. Edgar's ambitions were but a reflection of your own desires for glory, each one of you as guilty as the last in this conspiracy of fate." A wave of realization washed over them, exposed in layers of betrayal and long-held grievances. Tears mingled with fury as they grappled with the reality that not only lust, but the complexities of their entangled lives seeped into a singular act of fatality. Yet here we are, bereft of grace, pursuing an answer through suspicion. Poirot's voice, calm and deliberate, drowned out the storm outside. "The final dance remains not between lovers, but a cautionary tale of us all, your heart's desires entwined with the fragility of trust." In the end, as the storm subsided and dawn pierced the horizon, Poirot delivered the final word, a bas-relief, quiet but resonant admonition. "Remember, mes amis, we are often our own worst enemies, dancing to the melodies of our failures. Let not the heart become the instrument of our demise.